think about fixing your cash flow. My lands, private money is your quickest way to not only getting your first real estate deal, unless you're wholesaling, and a big way to infuse your checkbook. So think about it.
All right, guys, my name is Julian Castle, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Jay Connor. And Jay Connor, how you doing today?
Oh, my lands, Julian, I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me to come along and talk about the subject that I'm the most passionate about, and that's private money and how it's changed our business and how we never miss out on a deal for not having the money.
Oh my God, that's so amazing. I know that a lot of real estate investors have that as a sticking point. So, can you tell us the origin story of how you came to overcome this problem? To now
Well, I
never
could
having to worry about private money.
I can tell you, I just didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, I think I'll go raise me some private money. It doesn't work that way. All the growth, all the good stuff really comes out of the valley, being down in the valley and having a problem. And so how did this all begin? Well, my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we've been investing in single family houses. We do commercial as well. I've done condominium projects from the ground up in shopping centers, but primarily focused on single family houses here in Eastern North Carolina with only a population and target market of only 40,000 people. We do 2 to 3 deals a month. But average profits are 78,000. I don't say that to brag on myself or pat myself on the back. I tell it to make a point. You don't have to be in a large market to make significant income. So we've been doing this for 20 years full time. Well, here's how this private money thing came along. From 2003 until January 2009, I relied on the local bank to fund my real estate deals. That's all I knew to do. I didn't know anything about creative financing. I'd never heard of subject to the existing note. I'd never heard of controlling on lease option. I never heard of seller financing. And I for sure had never heard of private money, never heard of hard money. By the way, I'm not talking about hard money when I say private money. Hard money is typically a broker of private money. So private money, we're talking about doing business with individuals. So I'd never heard of all that. And I tell you, Julian, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting here at my desk. Believe it or not, we actually still have receivers here in Morehead City, North Carolina, with cords actually still attached to receivers. I know some people don't even know what this is. But anyway, I picked up my handset, which is separate and apart from your telephone. I picked up my handset and I called my banker. His name was Steve. And Julian, I had had this type of conversation with Steve, my banker, for 6 years, many, many times. He had funded many deals. So I called him up. I had 2 houses under contract to buy. And so I told Steve, after a little bit of chit chat, where they were located, the funding required, and all that kind of stuff. And I thought everything was just hunky dory. I thought everything was fine. And then I quickly learned, Julian, on that conversation, on that phone call, that my line of credit had been shut down. Steve said to me, he says, Jay, don't you know there's a worldwide financial crisis going on? I said, no, but now it sounds like I got a financial crisis going on, right? And I tell you, Julian, what drives me nuts, bonkers, crazy, insane is when somebody looks at you and you got a problem and they think they're just so wise. And they'll say, oh, in the midst of every problem, you got an opportunity. I want to throw up. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem, right? I got 2 houses under contract and I ain't got no money funding for those 2 houses. This is a problem. So I sat here for a second after I hung up the phone with Steve, the banker, and I thought to myself, who do I know? And I know you've heard of that book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, Who, Not How. So I asked myself, who do I know that can help me with my problem, right? Well, Jeff came to mind, good friend of mine. He was investing in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. And I called him up and I told him what had happened. He said, welcome to the club. I said, what club? He said, the club of losing your line of credit at the bank. They cut me off last week. I said, well, how are you going to fund your deals? He said, well, Jay, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. He said, you ever heard of self-directed IRAs? I said, no. And I said, well, that sounds like something I need to learn about. So I went to studying, Julian, private money, how to raise it, how to attract it without ever asking for money. I got $8.5 million right now of private money available to me for our deals. We got, 12 houses going on at the same time. And I said, I want to attract this money, but I don't want to be begging, chasing, persuading, selling, trying to talk anybody into loaning me money. How can I do that? Well, did you know, Julian, I've never asked anybody for money. And how do I do it? I put on my teacher hat. I put my program together. The traditional way to borrow money is you go to the bank, you get on your hands and knees, you put your hands underneath your chin, and you go, please fund my deal. You go to the hard money lender, please fund my deal. Well, the reason you're doing that is because traditionally the lender makes the rules. Traditionally, the lender sets the interest rate, the lender sets the term, frequency of payments, loan to value, all that. In this world of private money, guess who makes the rules? We do, right? We make the rules. We set the interest rate. We set the term. We structure deals that you don't even have to make any payments, right? We never have to take any money to the closing table. Hello. We don't have to take any money to the closing table ourselves. We actually get a check when we buy. We get a check, we bring home, and they say, Jay, how do you do that? You can't borrow money without any skin in the game. Well, I can tell you what the skin of the game is. The skin of the game is the equity in the property, and we're giving the private lender an equity cushion. We're not going to borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value. I didn't say 75% of purchase price, 75% of after repaired value. That's how we're able to bring home a big check. And by the way, private money is just not for rehabbing houses. Private money is when the seller requires all the cash. So back to my story, my origin story. So I put my program together. I still got those 2 houses under contract. So I decided I'm going to pay all my private lenders 8%. I'm going to pay them a straight 8%. I'm not going to pay any points. I'm not going to pay any origination fees. I'm going to borrow up to 75% of the after repaired value. So I put my program together. And it was on a Wednesday night at Bible study at church here on Barber Road in Morehead City. Still have those 2 houses under contract. I walked into Bible study, Julian, and there was this gentleman that I wanted to talk to. By the way, no fear of rejection. You cannot be rejected if you're not asking anybody for money. So here's exactly how I got it for the very first time. I walked up to, let's say his name was Frank. I walked up to Frank. I said, Frank, after Bible study, can we get together and visit a little bit? He said, sure. So after Bible study, we went down to the nursery, shut the door, and here's exactly what I said to Frank. Now, this was in January still, 2009. I said, Frank, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was the original Zenith television dealer. Now, Julian, if you don't know what the Zenith television dealer is, that's because you're too young, and that was before Walmart came to town, right? You actually bought your televisions from the Zenith dealer. You actually got your TVs repaired back then. So anyway, I said, Frank, you know everybody in this town. Now, I want you to listen to what I said to Frank. I said, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was in the Rotary Club. He was in church. He put televisions in everybody's house. I said, you know everybody in this town. And Frank, I need your help. There's a writer downer right there. Frank, I need your help. I said, you see, I've now opened up my real estate investing business by referral only to people that I know and trust, and I'm paying insane high rates of return now for my investors. When you run across somebody that's complaining about the stock market and the volatility and losing money in the stock market, or not getting anything in the local bank, they don't like the rates down there, what they can get in a CD, would you refer them to me and I'll tell them about my program? Well, what do you think Frank said? Frank said, well, now, Brother Jay, what you got in mind? And I said, are you saying you might be interested? He said, well, yeah, we're only getting 3% in a CD at the bank, and we've lost a bunch of money in the stock market with it being all up and down and all over the place. He says, what kind of rates are you paying? And I said, well, Frank, that sort of depends on the deal, but what sounds high to you? He says, well, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6%. And I said, Frank, I can't pay you 5 or 6%, but I can pay you 8%. He said, put me down for $250,000. So I went to his and his wife's home the next day. I went over the entire program with them, which takes only 20 minutes to talk through it. And by the way, private lenders always have more money than they tell you. He quickly became, he and his wife, $500,000 private lender. But that was my first private lender. And guess what? I closed on them two houses. And notice I didn't ask Frank for any money. I asked him for his help to help me spread the word. And besides them becoming my first private lender, they did spread the word. I got a bunch of private lenders just from them, talking about how happy they were with this program. So no rejection, no fear here. You lead with a servant's heart and you just start sharing with your connections, cell phone, Facebook, Instagram, church, Rotary Club, Business Networking International, whoever you know, right? And start sharing. And I love starting conversations with did you know questions like, did you know there's a way people can earn unlimited money per year tax-free? Of course, they don't know the answer to that. That's a Roth IRA and a self-directed IRA, right? Yeah. So just start sharing the program and the money starts chasing you and you don't have to do any chasing.
Jay, you have blown my mind. I am so impressed with the way you handled this situation and you made yourself close on those two houses.
Yes. Yes.
Now, how can someone persuade the person?
Well, there's no persuasion. The program itself actually does the persuading. Like when they hear they can get 8%, and by the way, you got a lot of talk going on out there as to how you can get 5% in a CD at the local bank. Let me tell you the truth of the matter. In fact, just take me up on my challenge. Google average 12-month certificate of deposit returns or interest rate, in the nation. And I checked it out 2 weeks ago. It was 1.27% was the average nationwide. Now you'll see some credit unions or banks say 4%, 5%. Look at the small print. That's on the first $15,000. What are they paying you on above that? Anyway, I digress. So what was the question? I got so excited.
Yeah. So
persuading. There's no persuading. So when I share the program, and by the way, you can share the program one-on-one, coffee at Starbucks or wherever, or you can do a private lender luncheon, right? I mean, actually in my book, Where to Get the Money Now, I got a whole chapter on how to have a successful private lender luncheon. I've got $969,000 pledged in new private money at one luncheon. I mean, it takes the same amount of time to share the program to 20 people as it does one, right? And so you share the program. Here's how you can earn high rates of return safely and securely. You share the program and shut up. I mean, if they got investment capital or they got retirement funds that they're not happy with, they're going to be asking you. I mean, when you share the program like I do, they're going to be asking you, well, what do I do? Just write you a check? And of course, the answer is no. They don't write you a check. We don't take any money directly from the private lender. They wire the funds to your closing agent, your title company, your real estate attorney, whoever's handling your closing. And then you get your big check, after you close. But again, there's no persuading of the asking them, how much you want. You don't have to ask, you share, you lead with a servant's heart and you teach. You are a teacher sharing this program and what you know about how people can earn a lot of money safely and securely.
That's amazing. Now, Jay, what are some common objections that people face when doing this?
So you're talking about an objection from the lender?
Yes.
Yeah. So one question they're going to want to know is, well, how soon can you put my money to work? Because they don't want to pledge you the money and you're not going to put it to work, particularly if you have introduced them to a self-directed IRA company. And I've got all my private lenders that are using their retirement funds. So, I got private lenders that are funding with just liquid capital, investment capital. I have private lenders that are using their retirement funds, but they've moved those existing retirement funds over to an IRS approved self-directed IRA company or third-party custodian. So they're using, both kinds of money to fund. So if you've introduced them to a self-directed IRA company and they've moved their funds over, they're not making any money while that money's just sitting there in their account. They're counting on you to put that money to work. So and they ask that every time. Well, how soon can you put, my funds to work, my money to work? And you need to have a truthful answer and tell them, well, here's typically about how soon I can put money to work. And when I have a new private lender come on, I actually put them at the top of the list, right? I mean, I want to show them I'm able to put that money to work. They will also sometimes want to know, but I answer these questions before they even ask in the program. So like part of the program is I give my private lenders what's called a 90-day call option in the promissory note. So I tell them, life and circumstances happen. You may have something come up. You need to get your money back early, right? Well, if you got your money in a certificate of deposit at the local bank or credit union, you can get your money back early, but what you got to do, you got to pay a penalty. Well, there's no penalty in my program. If you need your money back early for any kind of emergency, then all you do is just give me notice. And I don't even need 90 days, but I put in the note 90 days. That gives me plenty of time to cash you out with another private lender and replace your money with another private lender's money and pay you off. You don't have to do that. In the real world, I've only had 2 notes called due early. They were both small $30,000 notes. And that was because of, medical situation going on. I've never had any other notes, called back early. They're not going to want to loan to you unsecured. I never borrow unsecured money. You can legally, you can give them a promissory note, but don't do it. Look after your private lender, take care of their interest. And so we're always going to back their note with the real estate, with the mortgage or the deed of trust that we're using the money for. I also name them on the insurance policy as the mortgagee. Now, they don't even think of that, but I'm going to look after them. I name them as the mortgagee because if there's ever a insurance claim against that property, the insurance company is going to make the check payable to your private lender and to your entity that owns the property. So the private lender's got to sign off on that, right? So we're giving the private lender the same security and backing and looking after their interest as what a local bank gets when you're borrowing money on real estate.
Sounds interesting. So if you don't mind, would you like to share the program with us?
Well, it's got about 20 points to it. It's in the book, but I'm glad to go over it, real quick if you like for me to.
Yeah, for sure. I think we would get a pretty high level understanding,
Sure. So let's go here to the chapter so I don't leave out many important points here. So by the way, my list of reasons that I love private money is pretty long, like no credit check, there's no application. I can offer to close deals in 7 days, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and just on and on and on and on and on. So the actual program itself, first of all, the interest rate. So I pay 8%. In first position, I pay 10% in second position, meaning I can have more than one private lender that's being secured by the same property. So what is important there is what's called the total loan to value. So let's say I've got a house with an after repaired value of $200,000. And so 75% of 200,000 is 150,000. Well, let's say this house does need rehab. Okay. It does need renovations. Let's say it's got 35,000 in renovations that are needed. Well, let's say I buy it for 100,000, which I do all the time. I mean, I buy houses all the time at 50% or less of after repaired value, right? Let's say I bought it for 100,000. Well, if I borrow 150,000, that's 75% of the 200. So now my private lender is going to wire that $150,000 either from their investment capital or from their retirement funds at the self-directed IRA company and wire those funds to my real estate attorney. If I'm buying it for $100,000 and I'm having $150,000 wired, that's a $50,000 excess cash to close. Which, by the way, Julian, is my favorite phrase on my real estate attorney's check stubs. I love me some excess cash. So if I'm buying it for 100 and I got 150 being wired into the closing, I'm picking up a $50,000 check at the closing when I buy, right? Now, I'm not going to pick up a $50,000 check unless there's like renovations involved. So if I'm going to use 35,000 of that 50,000 for the renovation, I got an extra 15,000 laying around that I can use for carrying costs, insurance, taxes, utility bill, cutting the grass, whatever, while the renovation's going on. Then when I sell the house for $200,000, the after repaired value, I still owe the private lender $150,000. So here's another part of the program. We only pay interest-only payments or accrue the interest. We don't have to make payments. We can just let the interest accrue while we're renovating the house. Think about fixing your cash flow. My lands, private money is your quickest way to not only getting your first real estate deal, unless you're wholesaling, and a big way to infuse your checkbook. So think about it. You bought this house using this program with none of your own money. You picked up a $50,000 check when you bought. Who wants to get paid to buy houses? You picked up a $50,000 check when you bought. You might not even have to be making any monthly payments, right? You're letting the interest accrue. And so then you cash out. Well, you still owe the private lender $150,000 in this example. So I'm bringing home another $50,000 check when I sold, less realtor fees, less, if I sold it in the multiple listing service, less closing costs. So you see, I got 50,000 on the first check, and I used 35 of that to rehab. That left 15. I got another $50,000 check, less 10,000 realtor fees. So I'm pocketing $50,000 or more on this one deal. So again, another part of the program is interest only. No points, no origination fees, no application fees. Your credit score's got nothing to do with how much you can get. There's no verification of income that you have to provide, right? Mm-hmm. Another part of the program, no extension fees. So I'm contrasting to hard money. And by the way, I got some great friends that are hard money brokers that actually use my techniques in the book to go raise a bunch of money for their fund. Because, hard money lenders loaning money out from their fund. I say, look, establish as many relationships as you can for the funding. Because if you don't have private money, then if the math makes sense, of course, use your hard money lender. But a hard money lender is going to charge extension fees if you have not cashed out within 6 months or 9 months or whatever the term was. So if you've made the payments on time, they will extend your note. But what do they want? More money. I know one hard money lender that if you haven't cashed out in 12 months, they will charge 3 more points, 3% of how much you borrowed, just to extend for 90 days, right? Well, in this program with private lenders, there's no extension fees. They don't want the money back. They want you to extend the note so they keep earning money on their money, right? Another part of the program, as I mentioned, is the loan to value. We borrow typically a maximum of 75% of the after repaired value. Another part of the program is, in contrast to hard money, is that how much will your lender advance to you when you buy? How much money are you going to get when you buy from your lender? Well, the hard money lender is going to typically give you 65 to 80% of your purchase price, not of after repaired value. 60 to 80%, 65 to 80% of your purchase price. Who's got to come up with the rest of the money when you buy? We do, if you're using hard money. But in this world of private money, another part of the program, I'm able to get a big check when I buy because I'm borrowing up to 75% of the after repaired value. The length of the note. Length of the note is 2 years or 5 years. It's 2 years if I'm using just liquid investment capital. It's 5 years if I'm using their retirement funds. And the reason for that is I might sell it on rent to own and I don't cash out quickly. And it just gives me, that option. So those are the highlight bullet points of the program and how you put the program together. Just duplicate what I've got in my book here, and it puts you in the driver's seat of your business.
That's amazing. So, Jay, how much did this impact your investing career?
Wow. Well, let me give you the short-term impact, and then let me give you the long-term impact. So the short-term impact, you see this happened. I got cut off, right? Biggest blessing in disguise was for Steve the banker to cut me off. Actually, he didn't cut me off. The bank did. Anyway, biggest blessing in disguise. Remember what was going on in 2007, 8, 9, all those foreclosures that were coming out, right? Of course, that was for a different reason than we've got them today. Well, but guess what? You had all these foreclosures flooding the market and the banks weren't lending money, right? So you got all these houses for sale and nobody's lending money. Well, now with private money, our business tripled in 2009, those first 12 months, because now I had all this money. I was able to raise $2,150,000 my first 90 days of using private money. And so now I had all this money available, burning a hole in my pocket. And so now I was able to pick and choose which of those foreclosures that I wanted to do that were on the market, right? That was the first 12-month impact. Today, we got 47 private lenders, individuals that are funding our deals. And so now the long-term impact is I have another problem. I have a different problem. I got more money than I can use. Right? And no, I'm not interested in being a broker. But I am interested in all of your followers, subscribers, and members to get my book at jayconner.com/book. I'm an ER, not an OR. Jayconner, JAYCONNER.com/book. Get the book and start attracting the money into your world, and it will turn your business upside down.
That's amazing. I got a gist of the program, and I see why people find it interesting.
Absolutely. Well, where else are they going to get these kinds of returns this safe, right? I don't know. I don't know where. I mean, you can get maybe higher returns on riskier stuff, right? But to have a conservative loan to value on the after repaired value and getting 8% or 10%, depending on the position. Another part of the program, you're going to need to decide what's your minimum investment. That's what they want to know. And they always have more than they tell you. They always have more than they tell you, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to ask you, what is your minimum amount, right? And my minimum amount is $50,000, right? My real estate attorney charges me the same thing to close a $500,000 deal as a $50,000 note, right? So my minimum is $50,000. I can't buy a house with $50,000 in today's market, but I can use that for renovation money, right? So you'll need to decide what is your minimum that you're going to accept. Now, here's another very, very important part of the program. Do not miss this. Mm-hmm. Do not have a conversation with a new potential private lender and teaching them about the program and bringing up in the conversation a deal you got under contract that you need funding for you for the deal. Listen, desperation has got a smell to it. And you may not even be sounding desperate, but if you are teaching somebody and sharing with them, your private lending program, and in the same conversation, you got a deal under contract, you sound like you're begging and you don't even mean to. So we separate the conversations. We have a conversation, you have a conversation with a potential private lender, and you teach the program as to how it works. And so they're on board. They tell you how much they've got, is it investment capital? Is it retirement funds they've got? And you need to introduce them to your rep at the self-directed IRA company that you're recommending. By the way, that's an actual item. You need to establish a relationship with a self-directed IRA company, third-party custodian. Over half of my private lenders are using their retirement funds. And if I didn't have a relationship with a self-directed IRA company that I would introduce them to, you're going to miss out on over half of the funding available to you, because over half of my private lenders are using their retirement funds. But these private lenders, they absolutely love, they love the program. My minimum is $50,000. You need to decide what your minimum is and just start sharing.
That's amazing. And you mentioned something which I think it's the normal progress of evolution, which is you're not doing commercial deals, right? A little bit of shopping centers and an apartment.
Yeah, so I've done a shopping center from the ground up. I've done condominium projects. Now, I'm glad you brought this up, Julian, because if you're interested in doing commercial deals, such as maybe some small apartments or duplexes, quadplexes, whatever, it's all the same money, but you're going to structure that differently. So when you're raising private money for a commercial project, you're probably going to need a fund. You're probably going to need to establish a fund. SEC attorney is going to need to draw up that private placement memorandum, right? And depending on how the fund is drawn up, you may be limited to borrowing from accredited investors, or you could have the fund written up to where you could borrow from anybody. In this world, we're not having to use a fund, right? Our private lenders are not investing in a fund. Everything that we do is called one-offs, meaning you got a private lender or a couple of private lenders that are funding a piece of property, right? So according to the SEC, that's not a security, right? So if you're having a security such as a fund, you got to have it SEC compliant. This here, we got private lenders funding real estate, and they're getting their own individual deed of trust or mortgage that's backing that note. With that being the case, you can borrow money from anybody, anywhere. They do not have to be an accredited investor. So that's another reason that when you're doing business like this, it just gives you so much flexibility instead of having to establish a fund.
Makes sense. And I do have some people in the audience who would probably like to know a bit more about how to do it for commercial. Could we touch on that?
Well, I've never raised private money for a commercial project, so I'm probably not qualified to talk about the commercial side. However, I've got some really, really good friends that I could introduce your members to that have raised millions and millions and millions of dollars for commercial projects as well. So that would probably need to be a different conversation. And you might want me to introduce you to one of my friends and you have them here on the show and talk about commercial deals.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get that done.
Awesome.
That's amazing. So I want to talk about, where do you find these people?
I hear that. So where are these people? They're all around you. They're everywhere. I mean, money is around you all the time, right? So it can be your brother-in-law. It could be, a churchgoer. I mean, Carol Joy and I, we've been a member of the same church since 1988. We probably have 75 members or so. I got about 8 private lenders from just church, right? Just sharing it with them, right? So, they're in your cell phone, right? They're on your email list. They're on your social media, Facebook. And I don't mean your fake Facebook friends. I mean people that you actually have a connection with, your Instagram connections, people that you actually know. Do you play golf? Are you in sports? Have you got kids that are in sports, right? So it's all your social connections, right? Now, you can also do business with existing private lenders. Where do you find existing private lenders that are individuals? We're talking, this is all no institutional money. This is doing business with individuals. Where and how can you find existing private lenders? Well, I'll tell you a little secret. Did you know over 70% of account holders at self-directed IRA companies, third-party custodians, over 70% of those account holders want to loan you money on your real estate deals.
Wow.
They want to be passively involved in real estate, but they don't want to go out and negotiate deals and find deals and spend money on marketing and oversee renovations. They just want to invest, loan the money, and get a nice rate of return and be passive. Well, how do you meet them people? Well, there's one particular self-directed IRA company. All my private lenders have their retirement funds there. The fourth Wednesday night of every month on Zoom at 7:30 Eastern, they have a networking Zoom event. And they got the lenders come. They got people wanting to loan money to real estate investors. They got the real estate investors coming, and they put you in breakout rooms, and you all get to meet each other and get to know each other. But there's one little caveat to that way of doing it. They already know what they're accustomed to getting. So you're not going to be teaching them your program. You're going to be asking them, what are they accustomed to getting, right? And when they say 12% and 3 points, conversation over. Right. So again, so that's more of an interview process, getting to know one another and see if they have, rates that, you can be happy with. The beautiful thing about going to what I call your warm market, people that you have already association with, you're teaching them. I mean, did you know this, Julian? I know that you won't find this surprising. Of the 47 private lenders we've got, not one of them had ever heard of private money. They didn't know what private money or private lending was, and they never heard of self-directed IRAs and how they could move their retirement funds over to a self-directed IRA company and get, predictable, reliable returns versus having their retirement money in the stock market or whatever.
That is amazing. So many people out there with money that's just going down because of inflation.
Absolutely. Prior to COVID, there was $18 trillion in cash sitting on the sidelines with people didn't know what to do with it. This side of COVID, $31 trillion in cash in retirement accounts laying around waiting for somebody to fix their problem. And it's our moral and ethical obligation to relieve them of their problem as to what they can do with their money.
Yes, I love it. We're on a heroic mission.
Yes, put on your teacher hat and share.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jay. And Jay, tell us a little bit about your students. Do you have any highlights of your students that you could share with us?
Absolutely. So we have Eric and Erica from Mississippi, Poplarville, Mississippi. And they came into my world a couple of years ago. They've been in my high-level mastermind group. They now have raised they just went over the 3 million mark. So they now raised $3 million in private money. They were doing some creative deals, subject to and stuff before we started working together. There's Jonathan and Kara. They've got over 2 million. Crystal Baker, she now has, oh my lands, I want to say it's right around 4 million in private money. So my students, when we start working together, it's very, very common for them to get 500,000 within 30 to 90 days that they can start using. And so, here's the deal. Just do what I do. It works. Don't try to fix it, right? Just follow the program, right? And duplicate it, and the money will be chasing you, and you won't be chasing any money. And here's another way that I don't ask for money. Remember, we separate the conversations between teaching the program and then having them put their money to work. So they've told me how much money they got to work with. I now have a deal for them to fund. So I call them up and I tell them 4 things. I tell them, I got great news for you. I tell them that I have a house and I give them the location. I don't tell them the address. They could care less. Funding required for the deal. I know they got it because they already told me. They've been waiting for the phone call and the funding date. So Julian, let's say you're one of my private lenders. I call you up and say, hey, Julian, I got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house in Newport with an after repaired value of $200,000. The funding required for that deal is $150,000. Closing is next Thursday. So you'll need to have your funds wired to my real estate attorney next Wednesday. I'm going to have my real estate attorney email you the wiring instructions for you to wire. So check your email later on today. Email's coming. End of conversation. I didn't ask you if you wanted to fund the deal. That's the most stupid question in the world I could ask you. If you want to fund the deal, of course you want to fund the deal. You've been waiting on the phone call, waiting to put your money to work. So again, no chasing, no begging, no selling, no persuading. You teach, get a deal ASAP, call them up with good news, close the deal, and bring home a big check.
That sounds amazing. It honestly, it takes all the guilt away from it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you cannot have a fear of rejection if you're not asking for money. You're truly leading with a servant's heart, sharing with people that how they can get high rates of return safely and securely. I mean, the only complaint I've received from my private lenders is they say, "Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?"
Yeah, or why can't you keep me in the deal longer?
Oh, they don't want their money back. So you need to put their money back to work just as soon as you can when you cash out.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Jay. So, Jay, where can we find you?
To get my book, Where to Get the Money Now, subtitle, How and Where to Get Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Relying on Traditional or Hard Money Lenders. You get the book at www.jayconner.com/book. And if you just go to jayconner.com, I have a 45-minute masterclass that I actually teach on a webinar there. And it's available, on demand. You can watch that webinar at any time. And, and my phone number here to my office is on my website. And I know you're going to find this hard to believe. We actually pick up the phone when somebody calls us. Can you believe? Right?
That's amazing.
It's
so an outdated.
My phone number. Do what, Julian?
It's an outdated manner.
There's no buttons to push. You don't have to push 1 for this and 2 for that and 3 for this and 7 for that and 8 for that. Just give us a call at the number on the website, and we're here to support you any way that we can.
Amazing, Jay. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And we appreciate you educating us today on private money. I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room who do not have the knowledge about private money, maybe have money laying around, that not even putting to use. So this is great. I really enjoyed it, and I know that my members will find it very valuable.
Awesome. Julian, thank you so much for having me. God bless.
Thank you. Have a good day, Jay.
You too. Bye-bye.